Hello, this is Sean Carson, and you're listening to the Sirens of Audio.
G'day audiophiles, this is the Sirens of Audio, the show that explores the universe of Doctor Who and the audio medium. My name's Dwayne.
And my name is Philip. G'day Dwayne, g'day audiophiles.
G'day Philip. How are you?
I am excellent, thank you, in a great spirit.
You look like you're in a very jovial mood this evening.
I am. It's been a lovely day. The weather's been lovely. Well, we're of course in fall for our American listeners, or autumn for the English and us. So, but beautiful warm days, cooler nights, all's right with the world. Excellent.
We've got a good show lined up today because we're going to be speaking with a Big Finish director and actor. He's doing more directing lately, and that's Barnaby.
Soon-to-be writer.
Soon-to-be writer?
Yes, there's something on the website. He's written a river song coming up.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. We'll be able to talk to him about that too. So that's fantastic. He's getting very involved with all things Big Finish. So looking forward to chatting with Barnaby later on in the podcast. But first of all, I just want to start off with a bit of feedback that I wanted to throw in a more recent show, but I forgot. In the words of Basil Fawlty, I'm so sorry, I'm not perfect. But I wanted to throw it in. It's a really nice email. This is from Jonathan, or Jack W. Kirk, from Madison, Wisconsin in the USA, one of our American listeners. So, woohoo, we love it.
Yeah.
He says, Dwayne and Philip, hi there. And
hi.
In brackets, Big Finish podcast joke. I'm not sure what that means. Do you know what it means? I don't know what it means.
No.
I've been listening. You'll have to explain that to us, Jack. I've been listening and enjoying the podcast for about a year, I think. In fact, I can confirm it was a year. Because you say, I was introduced to your podcast via the Big Finish podcast when Dwayne went on to talk about the interview with Paul Spragg that you were featuring here. I very much enjoyed you guys. I felt compelled to write in for the first time when a podcast or two ago you were talking about whether you should be controversial. I just wanted to let you know my take as one of your listeners. I think you should avoid being intentionally controversial and political. There are so many things that are in your face political these days, and it is refreshing and uplifting just to listen to someone talk about something they love and I love as well. I think political and controversial things are important to talk about, but not in a way of trying to stir people up, and not in a context that is not supposed to be political. If you really want to talk about politics and how it relates to Doctor Who, I would suggest starting a separate podcast where that's the focus. Just my thoughts as your listener. It's your podcast, so you can do whatever you want. I also wanted to say I would really like for you to have Nick Briggs on the podcast again and do an in-depth interview with him about his life and career. I know he's very busy, but just let him know his fans are crying out for more. Thanks for putting on this lovely podcast. All the best. And that was Jack from Madison, Wisconsin. So awesome email, Jack. Thank you very much. Appreciate your feedback on the controversial topic. I was at the time I was talking about controversial subjects to try and get more listeners, make it a bit clickbaity, that kind of thing. Because that seemed to be, to me at the time, to be where a lot of listeners were going, where all these controversial subjects were. But we're happy to stay doing what we're doing, aren't we, Philip?
We are indeed. I mean, there is a place to talk politics in terms of when the stories are pushing you in a particular political view. And Doctor Who has never avoided politics. And sometimes it swings to the left and sometimes it swings to the right. So it's helpful sometimes and useful if authors are making political points, and we're not going to avoid politics as such, but we're not going to get into the political sphere of arguing politicians or issues. That's not what we're on about.
Yeah, absolutely. So, also mentioning his desire to have Nick Briggs on the show, all I can say, Jack, is watch this space.
Wouldn't it be lovely?
It would be lovely, wouldn't it, Philip?
It would be lovely.
Right. One more thing to do before we talk with Barnaby. You know what it is?
No, what's that, Dwayne?
We have some jumping to do, and we're going to jump straight into a rabbit hole. Here we go. Right, we're in the rabbit hole, and I'm just going to talk about directors, because Barnaby is our guest tonight, and he's prolific at the moment as a director, obviously coming in to do writing, as you just mentioned, as well. But I've been thinking about the Big Finish directors, and I can only think of one director for Big Finish out of all the main directors. Actually, I can think of two, because I'm thinking of Ken Bentley and I'm thinking of Jason Haig-Ellery. Those two directors are the only ones out of all the directors in Big Finish that aren't actors as well. So do you think, Philip, that having a handle on the acting side of things is beneficial for Big Finish? And if so, how so?
Wow, I do love how you just throw these questions. I mean,
This is cold. This is cold, folks. He doesn't know that's his coming.
Yeah, I honestly never know what he's going to throw at me, because if I had time to prepare some stuff, I could actually sound so much smarter. So I just don't think. You
always sound smart, Philip.
Yeah, you just don't want me sounding too smart. I know you don't. It's interesting actually, because directing in terms of career in the olden days, so the BBC directors courses, when television first started, even radio. When this TV went into production, it was never actors. And I think because there was a whole skill set required of directors. Theatre traditionally had often been directed by actors, so a lot of actors became directors and directed their fellow castmates. But when the whole technical side of television started, it became almost impossible. Actors just didn't have the skills all the time. Though it's interesting that, I think in particular a lot of American shows, most of the Star Trek actors started trailing the directors and learning how to direct. So lots of them have gone on to very good directing careers. Even shows like ER, a number of the cast from there started shadowing the directors and learning how to direct by copying and actually learning the skills. So I guess it's a skill set that could be learnt.
Well, if you go right back to Star Trek, the motion pictures, where Leonard Nimoy started directing.
That's right. Yeah,
it goes right back that far.
Yeah, so it was something that started to happen, but certainly in the early days of television, it became a separate entity. But it's interesting now seeing more and more. But as you talk to actors, the thing about a director, the job of a director is to help an actor understand and progress a character beyond what they need to do themselves. And so part of being able to give notes to an actor is being able to be an actor is part of makes us strong for that. So there is a whole technical side, and so a lot of directors they need the technical side. They need where things have to be placed. Even in terms of audio, that's important in terms of the microphones, the sound, the backup, and all those sort of things. But those are all skills that can be developed. All the actors that we're talking about, nearly all of them, who have come up through Big Finish ranks, actually started as actors on Big Finish, and no doubt were watching the technical side, watching how things were created, and trailing and learning that way. And the other thing about acting, of course, is it's just such a who knows when you're going to have the next job. And so actors traditionally have always had to have second careers, and if you don't want to be waiting in a bar somewhere, learning how to starting to write, starting to direct are ways that a lot of people have then developed. So I do think that an actor brings other things. Ken Bentley is stunning, but Ken Bentley was trained as a theatre director.
Yes, so that's what I was going to say. That he's got the theatre background, so I think, and all these directors for Big Finish have that theatre background.
Yeah. So, but Jason Haig-Ellery is the least because he's got much more of a producing side of things, rather.
But he doesn't direct too much. You only see him very occasionally. Yeah,
and it's still passion projects, and often more in the early days. I think when Gary was just overworked and overswamped, and Big Finish was running with a staff of 3 or something, he was stepping in a lot more then. But yeah, Ken Bentley has the theatre background. He was trained as a theatre director, so he was actually trained once again in that era when he used to train directors. But all the other Big Finish directors talk about all actors, and you actually see different directors do different things. So Louise Jameson, when she directs, there's a lot more emotion in terms of what's happening with the characters. So she really goes for the emotional character parts. Someone puts pausing. Oh, Helen Goldwyn. Helen Goldwyn's all about pausing. And so the dialogue has amazing pauses happening in between scenes, which actually add heightened tension, heightened emphasis there. So you can actually start seeing, I can almost now listen to something and know who's directed it.
Yeah. I love Lisa Bauman's, the way she is almost a minimalist when it comes to music as well. She doesn't like to jam-pack her stories full of music either. So that's one of her tropes.
Yeah, but Lisa actually it's actually about the dialogue she makes sing. And so all her emphasis in terms of clarity of dialogue. And so once again, how she paces her dialogue, how the actors phrase, she actually does a lot of work with phraseology. So in fact, the music comes from the voices. So yeah, you can listen to a director, and 9 times out of 10 now I'll know who's directing. And occasionally that's why something strange happens, and you go, oh, hang on, who's the director, who's the writer? So I mean, the writer who stood out most for me most recently was James Kettle. That every time I heard James Kettle's writing, because I don't look at cast lists before they come out, I try to listen to production not knowing who's in it. I don't look at the covers. I don't look at anything particular. I try and go as blind as I possibly can, and that's why James Kettle's writing really stood out as someone new and vibrant in terms of what he was doing. And once again, that happened to me the other day in the Unbound box sets, which I'd forgotten he was writing for. And I was halfway through, I was thinking, oh, hang on, this is really... when I looked up, oh, there you go, it's James Kettle. So yeah, back to the original point. Yeah, I think actors can speak to actors in a language in a way that a lot of people can't. Yeah.
I did think of one more director that I'm not sure if he's got an acting background. Scott Hancock?
I don't think. I'm pretty sure he does have an acting background.
So there's another one.
Done a lot of television production things. His directing has really come on. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it's 10 years since Dorian Gray, and I think Dorian Gray was one of the first things he started directing. But actually, yeah, his directing, his writing, his storytelling. That's I was going to say young man. He's not quite so young anymore. He was certainly a young man when he started working Big Finish stuff. But yeah, pretty extraordinary stuff that he's producing as well.
Yeah, so there you go. Interesting topic, and it's going to be great to get Barnaby Kay's insights in just a moment. And before we speak with him, here is something that Barnaby has been working on recently.
From Big Finish Productions, Doctor Who, Peladon.
Welcome, my friends, to Peladon, a proud planet where the eyes of the people are set firmly on the future.
See the prophet. See the divinity. See Skarn, the holy man of Peladon. Another miracle!
It's no miracle, Half-Air.
This promises to make the most interesting report I have written in years.
Our mountain speaks to us, and has done so for centuries.
How lovely! Such a visceral part of Peladon lore.
Ambassador Ribble, we thought you had gone.
Our tourist needs to be sure of all potential threats, Your Majesty.
The temple acolytes will stay with Solana.
Good. I'm not missing my chance to meet Alpha Centauri.
Oh, I'm game if you are.
That's the spirit.
Fight to be heard. Just as Agador once roared from the forest that stood on this wasteland.
Eyes!
You will listen!
This was woven from the webs of the last grey spider.
And now here it shimmers, with the last great seamstress poetry.
You are in a hurry, aren't you?
Always dashing for haberdashery. I'm the Doctor, your new apprentice.
I know where you wish me to go.
I need you to go into the streets below, round up these creatures, find out who's brought them here.
Big Finish. We love stories.
This evening's guest has a long history and a family history of acting. His father and grandfather were both in the business. He himself has had a large stellar career on theatre, on TV and in other film, and now on audio as well. We welcome Barnaby Kay. Barnaby, thank you for joining us.
Hi, well, you're very welcome. Great pleasure.
Yeah, now where are we speaking to you from?
I am out in the countryside today, having a quiet time. Big Finish have got me on some golden handcuffs writing, and they've put me in this rather wonderful environment to do it in.
That sounds fantastic.
So, yeah.
I noticed that you have the first writing gig coming up, and we'll talk about that a bit later. So I see that you've written a story for a River Song.
Yes, indeed, yeah.
So how exciting.
Very exciting.
So you really are dabbling your hands now across the board in all sorts of things.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm so grateful to Big Finish for the opportunity, because obviously during early lockdowns here and everywhere all over the world, the acting work just, the theatre business, show business was decimated, and there was nothing happening. And I built a little studio in my house and called up Big Finish and said, I'm all set up. And they were fantastic and offered me quite a lot of work as an actor quite early on. And then one day I said, are you ever short any directors? And they said, yes, and here's Peladon. You're on. So I was thrown in immediately into the deep end. And they've been very, very good to me ever since.
That's fantastic. Well, let's go back. Let's go back early days. Can we talk a bit about your childhood? As I said, you've come from a big acting family. What was it like growing up in a family from the profession?
Well, it turned out that so both my dad's parents were amateur actors in Newcastle. They ran a theatre called the People's Theatre, which lots of the actors from the Northeast will know. And I've not spoken to Chris Eccleston about it, but I'm sure he would have been at the People's Theatre himself after they'd left. So they were very much in the business of sort of semi-pro work in Newcastle. But also my mum's mum was an actress in Dublin. She was an Irish actress and came over with some West End shows into London. So it really has, it's 2-3 now generations. So it was. I mean, in a way, we're so sort of used to our own upbringings, aren't we? It doesn't seem odd to have a dad who kept disappearing and my mum kept appearing on TV, and my dad would be away for months doing theatre work mainly. And I'm seeing that with my son. He's hugely unimpressed and hasn't watched anything that we've done on the telly. And if we have to drag him to the theatre, I'm dragging him to see his mum in a play on Saturday night. He's not really interested. And so we're just mum and dad. We're very, very annoying. And my parents were much the same. So I didn't. The only thing, the sort of my abiding memory from my childhood was how much they discouraged me from it. As an option right from very early on. And so I wasn't involved in any school productions. I didn't do drama. It was O-levels at my time, GCSEs they're called now. There was a drama course I could have done, but it wasn't an option. My parents didn't want me to do it anyway. And it was only after my dad died, shortly after that, when I was 17, and I met all these actors at his funeral, these extraordinary people, most of whom I knew, but some I just knew from the TV. And there was so much support for my family and for me particularly, and an assumption that I would be going into the business. That was what everybody at the funeral was just assuming, and said, when you apply for drama school, come and see me and we'll work your speeches. There were other actors saying, as soon as you're in the business, let me know and I'll open some doors. And so there was no question that that's what I would be doing as far as they were concerned. And that night, the night of the funeral, I said to my mum what day I'd experienced with these amazing people. And she said that my dad used to come to bed saying, I know Barney's going to be an actor and there's nothing we can do about it, but I just don't feel I can encourage it. And so I said, I'm really sorry. That's all I need. And I just literally went off and did it. because that was my sort of my pink ticket. And I was grateful for her sharing that with me because it really felt that I had his blessing. And then I went on to have this, extraordinary, particularly in the early years, but even now, most jobs I did for the first 15, 20 years, there would be at least two people working on the job who knew and worked with my dad. So that was why I was there, was to sort of continue his business. So it was hugely emotional and very encouraging and really exciting, those early years of my career.
Do you feel like you've got to know your father even better in some ways since he's passed on, just because of all those connections?
I got to hear lots of great things, but what was most striking was, I'd sort of follow him around. So if I went on a tour, which I did a lot with the Royal Shakespeare Company, and we'd go to a theatre, and someone would say, "This your dressing room was your dad's dressing room," and so I'd be in the room he sat in. That wouldn't, theatres are the same the world over. It won't have changed in the 30 years since he was last there. So it was exactly the same. Yeah, but I'm sitting in my dressing room listening to stories, anecdotes from older actors, anecdotes that they would have told my dad or happened to my dad or with my dad. So it was just hearing those stories. Things my mum didn't know and wasn't, may have known some of them, but didn't know entirely and hadn't heard from these people, from the horses' mouths. And so that was the thrilling thing for me, was just feeling much, much closer to him. We were a very tight-knit family, but it was just in his absence, feeling so close to him was a real joy for me.
Yeah, I guess as you say, an actor's life, so many months is spent away from home, doing your business, supporting the family. And you go back and you'd be telling some stories, but you can't tell everything that's happened.
You can't tell everything, no.
Weeks.
And brilliantly, he was such a wonderful person and so adored that there was no dirt to dig. There was no. I had to carry that mantle really for the family, the kind of falling over in the Royal Shakespeare garden, on the morning that you've got two shows that day and you've just walked out of the pub. I sort of felt that needed to be rectified. So I did a lot of that on his behalf. But he was so good and so well loved. And I remember in my very first job, and I was a sort of mouthy, young, very overconfident young actor because I'd been sort of poached out of drama school by the Royal Shakespeare Company, so I didn't finish my drama school training, and so I felt like I was the absolute bee's knees. So we were rehearsing something, and John Nettles was in it, who plays Bergerac, was his big series in the UK, but he's a wonderful theatre actor, and I'd known him all my life as a friend of my dad's, and working with him, that was my first experience of working with one of my dad's friends, and so it was great. But I was mouthy in the rehearsal, and I said something to the director, which I would never say now. And John Nettles' response was, "Do you know that if we were working with his father, we wouldn't have half of this trouble?" And so there was, and that was so warming. that was the feeling that I was an upstart pain in the arse, and my dad, my dad was this golden man I was meant to be following, but couldn't possibly match, and that was delightful.
Do you want to actually, because you went to drama school, but you didn't finish because you were poached? Can you just talk a little bit about
poached is a sort of exaggeration. I got out early. Basically.
Yeah. So where were you studying, and how did you come to work for the Royal Shakespeare Company? Still the most prestigious theatre company in the world.
I know. And my dad never worked there, and always wanted to, and it was my first job. So that was sort of weird and slightly exciting. But I was at Central School of Speech and Drama, which was the only drama school I wanted to go to because that's where my mum had been. So I was sort of following in her footsteps too. So I was at Central and I was in my final year, and my dad's agents approached me and said that in the history of as part of our history with your dad, we'd like to offer you representation, even if it's only temporarily. And I was very grateful for that. And they said, look, what we're going to do is send you to a few auditions just as a practice. We don't expect you to get the jobs because you're still training. And the first audition they sent me to was with three directors at the Royal Shakespeare Company, Greg Doran, Bill Alexander, and Max Stafford Clark, and I got the job. And so my agent said, "Well, look, you're going to learn more at the Royal Shakespeare Company than you're going to learn in your third year at drama school. So leave drama school and go up to Stratford." And so that's what I did. So it was just an audition process, really. And I just got very lucky with the three. I didn't end up working with Greg Doran. I worked with Adrian Noble in this beautiful production of A Winter's Tale, which is what John Nettles was playing Leontes in. And we came to Sydney and did it at the Opera House in Sydney, which was thrilling, absolutely thrilling. We had a really, really wonderful time.
Was it about 1990?
Yeah.
Right.
It was 90, must have been 92, 3 by the time we got to you guys. Right. We came to you. Did we come to you in Sydney?
Don't tell me you saw that one, Philip. You didn't see that one.
I think I saw it on Stratford-on-Avon in 1991, 92.
That's when it was. Yeah, that's exactly it.
I saw that production.
Did you? Well, it was balloons and Samantha Bond. It was fab.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. It was amazing.
Yeah, really gorgeous. Yeah, it was a gorgeous production. And that, I'm just thinking whether we did come to Sydney. Maybe we went to Wellington. Maybe we didn't make it to Sydney. Maybe we went to Wellington. My memory, it was some time ago. My memory's gone a little bit. Anyway, we came your way, and had a wonderful time.
Yeah, if it had come to Sydney, I would have seen it in Sydney as well. So I don't think it came to Sydney.
It must have been Wellington then. It must have been Wellington.
I saw it at Stratford-upon-Avon.
Yeah.
One of my trips over with I was over there.
Yeah. It was a fab show and really, really popular. Went on a big European tour and then a massive world tour. It was great.
Yes. Well, my mother came with me because she had a huge crush on John Nettles.
Oh, yeah, right. No, fair enough. Yeah, we all did. He was really hitting the weights then as well, so he was absolutely built. He was solid, really solid unit. He was brilliant.
So you worked in the theatre for quite a few years, and you did lots of plays, theatre.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the first time you decided? Why did you first? Because there was a few television stuff you started coming over to do as well, like The Bill and things. I think you started doing.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's sort of in those days was the kind of actor's life, generally speaking, is that you cut your teeth in the provinces. Basically, you cut your teeth in theatre, and then started to audition for TV and and work your way into that. And it felt like a separate business, to be honest. Myself and my sort of contemporaries were quite. The theatre seemed to be where we would spend our careers. That seemed to be the sort of the feeling, and I was championed by Max Stafford Clark, who gave me work for years, and I worked with him on many productions, which was a great privilege, and so we thought that was our kind of thing, and then I just got lucky with a couple of TV auditions. I think early on, did a couple of BBC things, and then I got into Cracker. There was an episode of Cracker, the last one. It was like a feature-length episode, and it was filmed in Hong Kong, and that sort of helped me into the TV and film side of the business. And that was a real learning experience and an extremely rewarding one. And Robbie Coltrane was fabulous to work with, and I learned a great deal from him, actually. And from that, I that's when I came to Sydney. After that, while I was filming that, I got the movie with Kate Blanchett and Ralph Fiennes.
Shakespeare in Love.
No, Oscar and Lucinda.
Oh,
did I do Shakespeare in Love first? But I did Oscar and Lucinda. Must have come. I don't know. Again, the timeline is slightly misty. But I got the wonderful film Oscar and Lucinda. Australian story, and a fabulous book. And one of the things, it was relatively low budget, and one of the things they cut out, but for budgetary reasons, was my character, Sir Ian Wardley Fish, who is still one of my best named and most loved characters I've played, turns up in Sydney at the end of the book and has this hilarious journey on a donkey through the bush to go and find Ralph Fiennes' character. And they cut it all because they couldn't afford it. And I joked all the way through filming in Oxford and Cornwall and London that I would come to Sydney, even if I had to shoot it myself. And then there was some disaster with some film stock, and they had to fly me to Sydney to reshoot it. So even though I didn't get the end of the film, I still managed to get a trip to Sydney. So it was very lucky. But that was first meeting Cate Blanchett, my first meeting of Ralph Fiennes, my first movie. And that was just thrilling because it was a great story. It didn't do massive business in the cinemas, but it was a wonderful film. Really lovely film. Gillian Armstrong, really good.
Yes, she's pretty prolific doing
stuff
at the moment, isn't she?
Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of acting between theatre and television, was there a big transition you had to make in terms of how you went from one to the other?
I feel like there was. Now, I'm looking back, I wish I could do it again. That my early TV work, movies I didn't have a problem with. Movies suited me really well, but TV is different. It's a different skill in some ways, but I believe now that it's the Michael Caine quote. It's look them in the eye and tell the truth. Or however you do that, if that's audio or movies for theatre or TV, that's your route in. If you're lying, if you're trying to play the camera or trying to think what lens is it, how, can I wave my arms around or should I be absolutely still? They're very close. The camera seems to be very close to me. You're going to just it up. And so if you can just portray your character with truth and with focus, then it doesn't matter whether you're standing on a stage or in front of a camera. And that's the lesson I've learned. It took me a long time, and I've learned it far too late. But that's what I wish I could go back and change. Was not try and I knew about lens sizes. I knew what I was thinking about lighting. And I was playing all those bits which are really none of my business. And I think it made my early TV performances a little bit weird in my eyes. And I wish I sort of knew then what I know now. And I wish I'd just committed.
Do you actually look back at the performances and see what you did?
Absolutely not. No. I don't even look at the things I do now. I've just received today a copy of a film called Conspiracy, which I made in 1999, because it's a wonderful, an extraordinary and terrifying film about the meeting at Wannsee, all these top Nazi lawyers, as to what to do about the Jewish problem, and it's like a load of civil servants talking about gas chambers and gas trucks, and they're working out the logistics, and it's terrifying and verbatim from the meeting, and my son is studying that period of history, and so I will watch that. And it really is again, it wasn't a massive deal in the. I don't think it was made. It can't have been made as a TV movie, but an extraordinary team of people. Frank Pearson directed it, who at the time was the chairman of the Oscar committee, and he wrote Cool Hand Luke and all these extraordinary movies, and had directed a lot of them too. And he directed it. And it was like my first taste of Hollywood. He directed it like this was a big Hollywood blockbuster, even though it was just a load of English guys and Stanley Tucci sitting around a table for weeks, 10 weeks. We did this meeting, and so I will watch that again, not just because it's helpful to my son's studies, but because it's a great film that I haven't seen since it was released. It's got Stanley Tucci, as I said. It's Ken Branagh, Colin Firth. All these phenomenal actors. Tom Hiddleston even is in his first ever job.
Okay. Yeah. Oh yeah, you can drop a few names along the way, can't
Oh, yeah, all day. Somebody stop me.
I'll drop a name for you. I noticed you toured for quite a few years with the Teletubbies.
Yeah, that's hilarious. That's hilarious. I don't know who...
That's not true, is it?
No, I don't know who put it in. And I got awarded Email of the Year from my agents when I emailed them to say, should we be worried that on my Wikipedia page it says that I did a 5-year tour of the Teletubbies as Tinky Winky. And that was my email, and I got Email of the Year award. And they said that they didn't think it was anything to worry about. I asked my son if he knew anything about that. And he said no. And I said, do you know who could have done that? And he said, Matt, who is a friend of ours. And I called Matt and I said, Matt, do you know anything about this? And he said, no. And I said, do you know anyone who could have done it? And he said, Harry. And that was my son's name. So one of those two, or both.
Or both together.
Both together have altered my Wikipedia page. I know. I mean, it's extraordinary if anyone bothered to do the maths, how I fitted those 5 years into my career, because I was fairly busy around those times. I was just moonlighting off as Tinky Winky.
I did actually do the maths. I was reading it through and thinking, someone's put that in. I was going to ask you about that. But yeah, okay. How old is your son?
He's 15.
15. Yeah, no,
it's just destroyed my faith in Wikipedia again.
Oh, yeah, mate. No, totally. I didn't feel I needed to. I thought it'd be sour grapes to take it down, and if I took it down, they'd just put something else up. So I might as well just leave it. Very funny.
It amused me earlier today. Well, so when you weren't touring as the Teletubbies, in 2015, you actually worked on the Doctor Who show and worked with Peter Capaldi.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. That's
a true fact. I'm looking at
true fact.
True fact. How did you get the job with Doctor Who?
Again, that was an audition process. I know Ed Bazalgette, who directed it we'd worked together previously, and he just said, "Look, it's not a huge part, but you get to wear a ridiculous beard. Do you want to do it?" And then I said, definitely, yeah. So I grew this ridiculous beard, far more ridiculous than this. And the first thing they did was shave it off. And I'm so glad they did, because what they gave me was so extraordinary.
Yep.
that I was delighted to have it. And that's why Peter Capaldi calls me Heidi, with these extraordinary beard plaits that I had.
Yeah, so I think it's one of those characters that stood out because of being Heidi. He made so much fun of you.
Yes, exactly.
Was it much of a production? How long were you actually filming for?
We were there for a week doing our bits. There's obviously, there's quite a lot of stuff happening elsewhere in the episode. But so we were in Cardiff for about a week. Really, really lovely people that I was with. I've spent most of my time with Tom Sturton, who's a comedian and very, very funny. And we had a great time. And it was lovely to work with Peter. He was brilliant. They all were. They were just lovely. It was a really great experience.
Now, about the same time, your first Big Finish Doctor Who came out as well, which was Dark Eyes 4.
Yeah.
Did one follow the other? Do you remember how they worked?
I don't. They certainly weren't related in any way. In that, I think that my time, I think they probably worked with Nicola a bit before then. It was around that time I was beginning to say, why haven't Big Finish phoned me?
Right.
That was the sort of feeling that all my friends had done it and I hadn't. So I was getting quite cross.
Nicola had done 2 box sets of
There you
Dark
go.
Eyes before you did. And she'd also done the one-off with Sylvester McCoy.
I think I'd said to her, tell whoever it is
I want a job.
that you won't do any more unless they get me in. So yes, we bribed them, and then finally they did.
That's not bribe, that's blackmail. That's well and truly blackmail.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean.
Are you an artist, Monsieur Doctor?
Well, the Count.
What is your medium?
Time.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions. Doctor Who, Dark Eyes 4.
I've lost something. I've reason to believe it's close by. I wonder, this might sound odd, but have you seen a large blue box recently?
There are hundreds of ships. Thousands. Alert, High Command. They're heading straight for us.
You're too late!
It's hard to explain, but let's just say there was a glitch in the chronology of the universe.
Last! We must have damaged the timelines more than I thought.
The doctor must be found!
What's happening to your eyes? They're turning black.
I am the destiny and salvation of the Dalek race. I will control all Dalek operations throughout all of time!
Time controller? What do you control? Exactly!
Please, no applause. I am just your humble master.
Must stop. Time Lord.
I was always coming back. I've just had to do it a little sooner than I'd have liked, that's all.
It's Molly. It's something to do with Molly.
Doctor, now we talk.
Big Finish. We love stories.
Exterminate!
Did you have much of a Doctor Who background before then?
Not hugely. As a child, I was sort of traumatized early on by the last couple of series of Pertwee. I was fairly traumatized. And then I sort of dipped back in when Tom Baker was on it. And then I had this extraordinary... I must have been a little older because I was on my own in London and I was walking down the street and Tom Baker was walking towards me. And he was so impressive. And in my memory, he was in full Doctor Who costume, but I imagine he wasn't. In retrospect, probably not. But in my mind, he did.
You may have been in your Teletubbies outfit.
Well, yeah, I mean, it could have been. It's the mist of time. But he walked past me, and I was obviously I'd slowed down and was staring at him. And so he fixed me with his eyes as he passed me, knowing I was, very much his kind of target audience. And terrified me, froze me to the spot, and walked on. And I dared to turn round, and he'd stopped and was staring at me from a few yards down the road. And I was absolutely terrified. He'd clearly done it on purpose to terrify me. It worked brilliantly, and I fell in love with him there and then. So that was my sort of overarching memory of Doctor Who from my childhood. But it wasn't massive in my childhood. So my learning curve particularly over the last 3 years has been very, very steep, which has been brilliant because we have this streaming service, BritBox, and the whole of the classic series are all on there. So I need them for research all the time. And that's how I found the episode I wrote for River Song. That's how I found my way into her story, was going back and watching previous episodes.
Right. Okay.
So it's much bigger part of my life now than it's ever been.
Have you ever crossed paths with Tom at all in Big Finish to tell him that story?
No, sadly, I have him in an episode of Unbound, in the first episode, but I wasn't able to direct him. It was done by others. So I didn't, otherwise, no, I'd have liked to have told him that story. I know he'd have said this, yes, sounds like me. So I'm sure he would have really liked the story, yeah.
I was going to ask about the Unbound later, but what you just brought up now, in terms of that beginning section then with Tom and with Sadie and
Christopher.
Yeah.
Christopher Nail, of course. So did they just do that scene tacked onto something else that they were recording at the time, and another director?
That's right. That's the easy. There are huge sort of budgetary constraints, and so that was the simplest way of doing it, rather than having to call them in just for those first 2 or 3 scenes. So yes, they picked it up when they were doing a day on something else. And there were several versions, so I got to I got to collate it, but I didn't get to speak to them on the day. But they do such a great job, and they so know what they're doing that they don't need me. So.
Those first 5 minutes are very powerful throughout. Them and the changeover. It's a very, we don't want to spoil anything too much. I mean, I think people are aware that Tom is it. My reaction was just with because John Dawley writing the first script is that John Dawley just loves to murder off the male companions. That's the third male companion of Doctor Who he's killed.
Yeah, totally. It's jealousy. He's an actor, basically, isn't he? So he's just killing off the competition. Yeah. I think we need a new companion, he'll say shortly. No, I know he's got he has got that history. But what a cracking episode, what a great episode it is.
I've had lots of names, but only one that really counts. I am...
The universe cracked. A million timelines, a million possibilities sparked into flame and died.
No, you're gone. The Daleks are...
And in one of them was you.
What crime? What did I do?
But in the new reality, you're an aberration. A remnant.
Can't you hear that?
Hear what?
I think I see my own death.
He's the Doctor now. Well, a Doctor of War.
What are you waiting for? Exterminate!
I think you're afraid. Afraid that you might have developed a taste for it. For what? Genocide.
Big Finish, for the love of stories.
Can I just jump back a bit before you came in to direct Big Finish? I noticed that you were in some BBC radio plays, the Lovecraft Investigations. What are your memories of those? That was just a couple of years before the pandemic started. So
yeah, we recorded one during lockdown. Yeah, that's with this. I've had two sort of sets of Golden Handcuffs, Big Finish now, and previously it was this radio production company called Sweet Talk Productions, and they've used me on various things over the years intermittently, and then a friend of mine and Nicola's called Julian Simpson had been writing this sort of extraordinary virtual world called Mythos, and he'd used Nicola and Phoebe Fox and others in this world, created these characters, and he wanted to find a way of continuing that, and he hit upon the Lovecraft stories, some of which, I mean, there's accusations of racism and anti-Semitism in his stories, so that they don't follow the narrative entirely, but they're inspired by H.P. Lovecraft stories, and under the banner of the Lovecraft Investigations. So we did 3 series of that. The Charles Dexter Ward was the first one, then The Whisper in Darkness, and then Shadows over Innsmouth. And they're just, similar to the Doctor Who world, where of kind of mystery and shock, and that sort of fine line between humor and horror, and that's where these lie, in that sort of place with these extraordinary characters. And it was set up as a podcast, so which were huge, increasingly big things, particularly obviously during lockdown. But so they were set up as a true crime podcast, and in fact, I have several stories of people believing that Matthew Hayward, my character, and the entire thing was a true crime, a true podcast, despite the outlandish stories of devils and angels and aliens. So extraordinary that people could be taken in. But it's a great format, really good format.
If Orson Welles could do it,
well,
why couldn't it be done again?
That's what struck me too. Yeah, my cousin, in fact, was looking for a podcast for her run. Her daily run, and she asked somebody in one of her friendship groups, and he said, "You've got to listen to the case of Charles Dexter Ward. It's extraordinary." And she didn't know about it, looked it up, and then got back to the guy and said, "That's my cousin." And he went, "Your cousin's Matthew Hayward?" And he was totally sure that it was a real thing. But it's a great set of stories, really fabulously written and fabulously researched, and very very exciting, and it's shocking. It's shocking in a way that often Doctor Who can be so atmospheric that when something happens, there is a genuine jump scare. And if you've got headphones on, and round here there are woods and stuff, I was walking out in the woods listening to it one day when it first was released, the first one, Charles Dexter Ward, and I jumped out of my skin. And I knew what was coming. I've read the scripts over and over again, and I still jumped. And that's, I think, a nice power of audio. I think, that it can do that when you've got it, when you're absorbed and it's right in your head. You can really mess with people. I think it's fab.
So Peladon, you said, was given to you first to direct. Is that right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Before Jenny?
Sorry?
Before Jenny?
No, Jenny was released first. But Peladon was my first thing I directed. So that was my baptism. Yeah.
So I guess you had to research the John Pertwee stories. Get a handle on that.
Yeah, that was the first. That was when I downloaded BritBox onto my devices so that I could watch all of those, and it was incredibly helpful, obviously, to watch that and seeing David Troughton as it must have been one of his first TV jobs, or one of his first jobs. He can't have been more than 20. He's so young, playing the young king, and then to have him back playing the same guy, sort of. 50 years later. Was, mate, we're thrilling. And we discussed it briefly, and he was very much of the same mind as me, that he hadn't learnt anything in his 50 years on Peladon, and was still a feather for every wind that blows, and naive, and which was lovely to hear it from that, that sort of the gravitas of his voice, to hear that kind of naivety and joy was great.
Was to say that you, aside from the people you're with and the books that you read, you are the same person. And so
exactly. Yes,
a great
exactly
king
that.
who is not mixing with new people and probably not too much
isn't
reading.
going to change much, right? Yes, exactly.
Not much
And you'll notice if you cross-reference me with any of the cast, the guest cast, you'll find that our careers cross paths many, many times, because I just got my friends in because I needed people I knew would deliver and not question, and would come with something, and so they were fab.
So what other direction work have you done? Have you done other direction work in theatre or elsewhere?
No, I did with this the company that I mentioned before, Sweet Talk Productions, that did the Lovecraft investigations. They do a lot of work with the BBC, do a lot of dramas and various other things, and their producer, Karen Rose, said to me one day, we were recording, so I can't remember what it was. It was Edgar Allan Poe stories, and some sort of, I think they were Christmas time kind of horror stories for the Radio 4. And we came out for a break, and she said, "Have you ever thought of directing?" And I went, "Oh God, am I talking too much? I'm really sorry. I don't mean to." No, I'm in a good way. But no, tell me to shut up. You've got to tell me to shut up. It's none of my business. And she said, no, I'm complimenting you. And I said, no, no, not really. I'd love to, but no. And she said, well, why don't you direct something for us? And I said, well, what? And she said, well, bring me a script and let's do it. And I said, but I don't have a script. And she said, well, write one. And none of these things had really crossed my mind. And I said, look, I do have a story, but that I'd like to do, but I'd want to write it, but I've never written anything. She said, well, write it. And so I wrote this story, which is a true story, and she loved it, and it got commissioned by the BBC. And so I directed it as well. They produced it, and their sound designer, who I know really, really well, who's a complete genius, David Thomas, we recorded it. And at the very beginning of lockdown, and it was a fabulous experience. Again, I dragged all my friends in, and it was just great. It's a really cracking story about George Blake, the double agent who was imprisoned in early 60s in Wandsworth Prison, and not in Wandsworth, in Wormwood Scrubs, and escaped. And it's the story of his escape, because it was bizarre, and it wasn't really so much about George Blake himself. It was about the people who did it, who were guys like us three, just normal people they were activists, they were anti-nuclear campaigners, they weren't criminals, and because of that, they made no criminal moves. so the police never found them because they weren't doing what criminals would do.
Yep.
Like they stayed where they were rather than trying to get away. They stayed within a mile of the prison for about 6 weeks, and nobody was looking there. They were looking at Heathrow, and they were looking at London Airport, and they were looking at Dover. They weren't looking at around the corner. So they had extraordinary luck and extraordinary courage, and got him out, got him east. Amazing. So it's an amazing story, so that was my sort of way into Big Finish. I sent them that and said, I've got at least this much experience. Let's work together.
I'm very touched that Barnaby just described us, Philip, as normal people. Two Doctor Who fans. I'm almost shedding a tear. Could you tell us, Barnaby, what is the process as a director for a Big Finish story when you get the script? So what's the process from script to the point where you get everything down and send it off to sound design?
I'm one of the first thing that happens is I'm sent a script that has been looked at by the editor and looked at by the producer and given to me, and I'm allowed to do a pass on the script. And I very rarely have anything to say. Usually it's typos, which just I know you notice as an actor, because I know that rather than, even if it's a missing of or a missing apostrophe, for actors reading it on the hoof on the day, they may trip on it, and that's going to cost us time to retake and all the rest of it. So let's get it absolutely right, so that we have the best chance of getting it all done in the day. So I get rid of any typos that I find. But very occasionally, I might have a thought about something and then put that to the writers and the script editors and see if they like it. There was one in Dust Devil where Perry and the Doctor, in the original script, they land in a futuristic city, and I just asked the question whether we could make it London and make it now, rather than zippy motorbikes and things flying in the air. Make it something really down to earth and regular. Piccadilly Circus, busy buses, taxis, and make it sort of something oddly recognisable as a major city. And they thought, yeah, do it. And it's only a small rewrite, and not going to take them any time, and so that goes through. So I get a creative input early on, and then it's just about preparation. I cast as I read the scripts I'm casting, so I'm noting as I go instinctively who I know or have heard that I would like to hear doing these parts. So the casting is happening as I'm reading, and then particularly after it's cast, it's about prepping for the day. Our recording days are short and the scripts are long. So that doesn't ever add up. And I do a sort of, I've never thought I'd be someone who had a spreadsheet ever, but I do spreadsheets now. So I have a spreadsheet of times, scenes, actors. And you've got to stick to it as much as possible. If you don't, it's all just going to fall into jelly and then disappear by the end of the day, and you haven't done it, and it's just, you've got all this stuff you have to pick up. So you've got to be ready. And so my script, by the time I got it on my iPad, I got a little Apple Pen, and I write all over my script, and it is just, nobody else could use that script to record apart from me, because you can barely see the script underneath my red pen scrawls with arrows, initials, asterisks on everything. And I have to, each scene, I have this long list of asterisks, initials, where I go, actually, I think you should say that, or don't say that line, cut that line, say that all at the same time, all you guys. And it's, it's just a confusion of red pen. But we get through it. And so there's a lot of preparation before the day. And then the day is mainly managing time. And allowing for errors, allowing for third takes, fourth takes if they're needed, allowing for actors to find their feet and find their rhythm. and then managing the time up to the end of the day, and hopefully finishing early and getting people off. And one of the things that's been great about recording remotely is that people, generally speaking, are at home, and so they're in at home anyway. So they might as well record something. So most of my actors say yes. So they might as well do something rather than nothing. And also they've got no commute. They're right there. If I need them suddenly, if I get ahead of myself, then I can just text them and they'll come straight back to the mic, and we don't waste any time. So it's a long process of preparation. That's the key to it. Is do all the work beforehand and don't do it on the hoof.
So everything you've done so far has been remote? No studio?
No studio. No. So it's all been remote. Occasionally we've had actors that we need that don't have home equipment, like Geoffrey Beavers, for instance, who doesn't have a setup at home. So we get a studio involved, and we've got 2 or 3 that we still use. And so we've been able to record some people that don't have home setups on occasion. So that's been really useful.
Do you think it's a benefit being an actor and a director?
I think so. To some extent, I do. Certainly, as far as Big Finish are concerned, because I pick up all the small parts that you can't afford to pay someone to do. So I'm literally guard 1, 2, and 3. And I have to note myself as to which guard it is. You've got notes like high pitched one, or grumpy
Welsh,
one,
Scottish,
Welsh, Scottish, yeah, exactly, West Country one. No, I think it's not essential to be a performer to direct, but I think sometimes it gives you a shorthand, perhaps with some actors, gives you a shorthand to help them find what it is that you're looking for, because you've worked with the same director, or you've worked together and know each other, or you know what kind of actor they are, what type of how they like to work. So you can, some actors might just need a word and they'll go, yep. And that's that. That I don't need to go into anything. Some actors would like a little bit more context. So that being on the opposite end of notes and directing processes, I think works to my advantage. Yeah.
Are there disadvantages? Do you?
I don't think so. I don't think so. No. No. There are. Everyone has their shortcomings. There's no way I could play Barusa like Sanjeev Bhaskar. I couldn't do it. I need Sanjeev Bhaskar to do that. And so I can hear what he's doing and find a way to communicate a way I'd like him to try. But I don't think, I wish I'd done it, because it would all be easier. Because it wouldn't, So there are. I don't at the moment don't see the disadvantages. So there's no feeling of I could do this better, or I wish I was doing it, or they're being paid more than me.
You mentioned Sanjeev there. There's actors like him, actors like Nicola, who are totally recognisable even on this side of the planet. Every time I turn on the television, they're there. What is the appeal from these big, well-known actors like Nicola and Sanjeev, etc., to work for Big Finish, small company?
Because of who the people are, because of David Richardson, because of Nicholas Briggs, and because of Colin Baker and Tom and all of these people, and Jason, who I actually didn't know personally until this year, and Jason Hegelery too. But at the time, our connection was David Richardson and Nick Briggs. And they run a company that I've always wanted to work for and have never found. There are buildings and institutions you work for as an actor who always claim company. When my dad worked at the National in the 1960s under Laurence Olivier, that was a company. It was Anthony Hopkins and Maggie Smith and all these extraordinary people, Derek Jacobi. They all were there, and they all played parts in different plays. So my dad was Phoebe in The All Mail As You Like It. Tony Hopkins had a tiny part of Audrey in that production. And then the following month, my dad was Edward II, backed up by Tony Hopkins, and they had the leads, and that's what a company is. And the company is run, I mean, I think it was slightly different. I was going to say, it's run without stress, and there was a lot of stress in that period because they were building the National as it is now. So there's a lot of stress in that changeover. But that was a company, and Big Finish have a company of actors, and often they obviously invite new people in all the time. But if you're not enjoying it, don't do it, is their feeling, and that's what I feel. If you're not having a good time, stop. So, if you don't enjoy coming to Big Finish, don't come back. If you don't want to play 4,000 parts other than the part that you've been paid to play, don't come. If you want to spend your day that otherwise you'd be picking your hole and calling your agent, if you want to spend that day having a fat laugh, playing extraordinary characters from all over the imagined universes, then come in and let's have a great time. And that's how they run the company. It's hugely attractive. And I couldn't be more grateful and happier to be where I am now with them, where they're calling me and offering me these extraordinary scripts written by these hugely talented and imaginative writers, linked with these great actors who know most of my stuff has been with Colin Baker. He brings everything, knows what he's doing, hugely receptive, very, very funny. And Nicola Bryant and Paul McGann and all these people that come, and I've been working with doing the Space Security Service new series. So they've got a whole load of other actors. They really know their characters, and then I get the opportunity to offer work to my friends who I know will really enjoy themselves. But there's nothing my friend Rick Warden would like more than to play an alien. He would just love it. He doesn't get to do it in his normal day-to-day acting work. He came in and he smashed it because that's why he really, really wanted to be there and to do this character. And that's what you get. And you get a really enjoyable day. Everybody's smiling and everybody wants to do as much as they can to make this as good as it can possibly be. And that's because of David and Nick and Jason and everyone at Big Finish who create that atmosphere in which to work. That's my very long answer to your question.
That's great. I also get the impression that Big Finish was quite a lifeline during the pandemic too for a lot of actors.
Totally. Yeah, totally. Me no less than anybody else. I mean, my gosh, I've barely done anything else. And it was, there it was. You could, if actors had set themselves up, there they had this opportunity to do it from home and completely safe. And I have to say, I think that the studio experience with Big Finish is something else again, because there were these famous lunches that Toby, the engineer who owned the studios, Moat Studios, would cook these extraordinary lunches, and that was one of the draws. They don't pay an enormous amount of money; it's better than most. But in our business, it's not what people are used to, particularly for vocal work, and so. But these lunches were a huge draw, and also you get to meet really lovely people. I mean, I got to spend a day with John Hurt. I'll never forget it, and those sorts of things would happen on these recording days in the studio. But as far as from a director's point of view, I think there's a different quality when you're working remotely, where you can't see each other. There's a sort of focus to the listening, because you can't see facial expression. You can't see gesture. You can't, you're not getting a sense of the physicality of somebody, which can often feed into your performance. All you've got is the sound of their voice. So the listening is much acuter than it I think it would be in a studio situation where sometimes, like Nicola and I find each other incredibly distracting. And so when we had to do a big finish, we were in booths next to each other and I could see her waving her arms around. She can see me waving my arms about, massively distracting. And it's very funny. But remotely, you're just getting that voice. That's what you're being given. That's what you've got to work with. So you're really listening hard for your cues and listening really hard for the sense and for the tone of the scene that you're in. So I think it's an advantage.
Is it a deliberate choice then not to do something like using Zoom where you could actually see your performers? Is that the choice?
We could, yeah, it didn't really come up, to be honest. So occasionally, I don't like doing it, but occasionally. In fact, I haven't done it, but I know that some directors and some actors, I think Colin likes to see who he's working with. So there's a sort of 10-minute Zoom before the recording day, so people can see who each other are, which is great, and that's absolutely fine. To me, that's 10 minutes I could be recording, so I don't do it because I want to get on with it. And I hope, and certainly it's been my experience, that the days are still hugely enjoyable and everyone gets on really well and often and always, in fact, Colin compliments, either at the time compliments the actors before he says goodbye, or he gets in touch with me afterwards and says, what an extraordinary group of actors. So you know, it works. It still works. And the recording process we use is called Clean Feed, which is absolutely fantastic, where our engineers can record all tracks. So however many actors and people you've got on can record those tracks all separately. His end. We record a backup. Our end. Each actor records their backups, their end, and then they collate the two. So there's no need for picture. And I know, I mean, myself anyway, I'm a very physical actor when I'm acting on audio. I don't want other people witnessing that. So I'm very happy that no one can see me.
Now, Big Finish has now cast you as a lead in the new in the new release of U.F.O. So how did that come about?
That was Nick Briggs. It happens quite a lot. He's done it twice. Nick's done it twice, but I do it all the time too. We'll be working on something and Nick would go, Barney, I'm going to send you a script. And it's just because we hear it listening to each other's voices all the time. And so he sent me U.F.O. He sent me the Sherlock Holmes, the Jeckyll and Hyde first, apropos of something we were recording together. And then the U.F.O. thing came up. And I did it to him with a lovely part where I just thought the only person I can think of for this role is I was trying to cast. And then I'm on with Nick Briggs and he's Daleking around. I'm thinking, oh, it's Nick Briggs. That's who I need. Quick, cast him. And so, yes, we had a chat about U.F.O. He said, watch the series. I watched episode 1 of the series and called him back and said, no, Nick. No, we can't do this show. And he went, no. That the first episode, forget that. You've got to keep watching because the first episode is so full of innuendo. It's so crammed with cameras following ladies' bums down corridors. It's sort of soft porn. And I said, we can't carry this legacy forward.
And lots of drinking and smoking.
And loads of drinking and smoking. He said, no, they sort themselves out, which they do very quickly. And it's mainly gone by episode 2. And certainly by the end of, by 3 or 4 in, it's completely gone. And that's for the time, a great taste choice. Having shot their first episode, they must have gone, this is inappropriate in all ways for this series. Surely in the future we've moved on. And so very bright of the Andersons to spot that. And it's great. I mean, it was hugely daunting. I can't... Ed Bishop was renowned for his voice. How can you... unless you're John Culshaw, how can you possibly do that? I don't do impressions. And so how can you match... a guy whose voice was so distinctive and very sort of gravelly and deep without being, but with a full range of inflection. So very hard to mimic. And so what I tried to do was, I realized I had to be me. I had to be me playing that part. with a nod as much as possible to Ed Bishop's delivery, which is very, he was tense, wasn't he? So that's what you got to bring that tension into it. But the first episode spends quite a long, but the first series, I hope of many, spends quite a lot of time with in the TV series, just because of their sort of constraints. He had to get into the whole alien fighting thing pretty quickly, whereas we've got a bit more time, and so it takes him a bit more time to get into to be persuaded to be involved. So that's an interesting story that wasn't developed in the TV show. So that was good to sort of mine. And so it was great fun to do. It's and the other thing certainly in these early episodes, he gets a lot more action. Ed Bishop was mainly in the office, wasn't he? But in this, he's out in the field. So that's fun. Those scenes are fun to do on audio. The sort of fighting and diving out of cars and exploding is all good fun to do.
He did drive around a lot in that car.
He did drive around in the car quite a lot, yeah, with a burning look at the down to the side of camera. We can't really, that doesn't really translate, I'm afraid, to audio. So we had to cut most of that. But it's great stuff.
There's a lot of stuff where Nick's directing you, and there's a number of stuff that you're directing Nick. Does it just swap over quite casually? Does it ever feel strange when you're changing backwards and forwards?
No, Nick's fun, really good fun to direct. I had this character that I suddenly heard that I was speaking about, that I suddenly heard him doing, was a sort of kind of an old school spy kind of character. And I found a way of directing very quickly with him, where the first time I did it, I said to him, Nick, before you say that last line, could you just remove your spectacles? And he went, oh yes, yep. And you could hear him just go, and the next time I said, you've definitely, as you walk in, before you speak, remove your fedora. And you have him come in and go, excuse me. And it just, there's a shorthand like that. I mean, generally character driven, but, I knew he was going to get what I meant. Giving him visual cues was very useful. So no, it's fun, it's good, and he's got great attention to detail as I have, and he and we both want the best of everything. So he it's very easy to work together. It's fun.
Now I'm very excited about the forthcoming Jeckyll and Hyde.
Yeah.
I love that story, and I love all the different iterations of it throughout history. Are you directing this, or you've got a role?
I've got a role in it.
Okay.
Yeah. Gabriel Utterson, the lawyer.
Yep.
And it's through Utterson that he sort of takes you through the story. So that was great. That was great to do.
Well, Utterson's basically the star of the story.
Yeah. Right.
Really?
Exactly. Exactly. In some ways. Yeah. Totally. What did someone say? Oh yeah, someone said, an actress said to an older actress when they came on stage to do a warm up before a play, this young actress said, and here's the star, and here's the leading lady, and this older actress turned to her and said, no, you are the leading lady, I am the star. And so the star of Jeckyll and Hyde is Jeckyll and Hyde, and I'm the leading lady, I suppose. Utterson's the leading lady, but it was great. I love that Victorian stuff. It's lovely to do that sort of. I mean, I'd love to direct it. Really, I'd love to direct some Paternoster Gang. I don't think I'll ever get the opportunity, but I love that dark, smoggy streets.
Were you involved with the stage play at all?
No, I wasn't. No. So it was all this version was all very very new to me, but it's such a cracking story, as you know, it's such an exciting story, and I think it bears all sorts of adaptations, and this is a really really good one. I think it really works and translates from the stage really well. No, it's really good. Yeah. When's it being released?
I think about August,
okay.
September, something like that.
Right. Great.
August.
I look forward to it. Yeah, August. I look forward to it. Yeah, brilliant.
U.F.O is coming out the same month.
Is it? That's a busy month, isn't it?
It is a busy month.
Yeah.
I think your River Song's coming out in August as well.
Oh my goodness me. Okay.
So yeah, August, everything's coming out for you.
Yeah.
You must be probably doing nothing else but working Big Finish at the moment.
Yeah.
Your first story. How did you come to write for Big Finish?
I can't remember whether it was David Richardson. I think he just assumed I would, rather than asking me if I'd be interested. And so he said, he produces the River Song series, and he said, would you like to write for River Song? And I've directed Alex and worked with her as an actor. Over lockdown, I worked with her in an episode with David Tennant, which was great fun, listening to her as River Song. And then I directed her in the Peladon series. And so I thought her voice was very clear in my head. So I said yes. And then I just had to sort of search out, find something somewhere she hadn't been, or somewhere that hadn't been explored, and I got lucky, and did find this little gap, and put it to David, and he thought that it was a great idea. So yeah, I went ahead with that, which was
all your Doctor Who viewing suddenly
it's
paid off.
Absolutely paid off. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we found a really I think really great little narrative for her. Yeah.
Was it hard to write?
I suppose, despite me really hearing her voice very clearly, I really wanted Alex to read it and be excited by the things that she had to say and do. And so I felt pressure. And so I had a few goes at her opening scenes, several goes at her opening scenes, because I just didn't feel I was quite hitting something that she'd want to walk in and go, oh yeah, let's do this. And so that was a pressure I put on myself potentially, but I'm glad I took a lot of time over it because it worked out. But the main challenge was I came up with this kind of villain guy who I didn't really. I mean, I don't know about writing. I haven't done it very much, but you hear people say about the characters not knowing where their character is taking them, or not understanding their character until the character started to speak, and all this kind of stuff, which I'd always been slightly cynical about. But I had no idea who this guy was. I knew his name. I knew he was called Mal. That's all I knew. But as soon as he opened his mouth, he could not stop talking. And I don't know, I didn't plan it. He was a gobby, narcissistic, absolute pain in the arse. And I couldn't shut him up. And so the biggest challenge was stopping writing him because he had to walk away and allow somebody else to get a word in. So that was quite a big challenge, it turned out. And the other challenge was writing for an 11-year-old child, knowing that wasn't directorially going to be my problem. It was going to be Ken Bentley's issue. And so I merrily wrote a lead part for a young child. And then once I'd finished and it had been accepted, I told Ken Bentley what I'd done. And he immediately put in to write episodes for me to direct. But the brilliant thing, my secret was that my niece, who is 11, is an extremely good and very understated, focused and rather brilliant actor. So I said, there is only one solution to this problem of yours, and that's to cast my niece, and I will record her. And that's what happened. And so she is in it and is brilliant in it.
What an amazing coincidence! You happen to write a part for an 11-year-old, and you just happen to have a niece who can do the part. It's
the weirdest thing, isn't it? The weirdest thing.
Yeah, no blackmailing involved in that one.
Serendipity right there. It happens. Exactly.
So is roles for your son coming up as well? Actually, is your son?
He hasn't. He's done one thing for me. Him and two of his mates. I've never heard three more reluctant voices ever. They won't make the cut, I can tell you that. So they did some kind of background schoolboys for a Sixth Doctor adventure, and he's also in the Lovecraft investigation. So he has done some when he was a bit younger. No, I'm not writing anything for my son in. He wouldn't do it now. What I'd like to do, and David Richardson and I have had some early chats about maybe there'd be something for Livchenko in my brain somewhere. Putting words into Nicola's mouth is not something you do lightly, but under the guise of a writer, I might get away with it. She'll certainly have something to say in the script editing side of things, I should imagine. But that would be great if we could work out a way of doing that. That would be very, very good. I'd also be extremely interested in... I've got a couple of other things, a couple of other writing jobs on the go for Big Finish. And that is very exciting.
Well, Barnaby, can I say, extraordinary output you've managed to achieve in the last 12 months or so. What you're directing, you're writing, you're acting. It's been very exciting to watch. Yeah, all that blossom. And certainly, just three. I mean, the three releases so far in terms of Peladon, Unbound, Jenny. You couldn't get three more different tonally stories. From unbelievable humour to deep blackness, and some stuff. Some of the Unbound stuff like what the heck's going on here?
Madness.
It's political thrillers. It's just fantastic. So very excited to see what's coming next.
Well, thank you. Well, it's thrilling for me to do. I'm really grateful to Big Finish and to all you guys and your fans who are why we do it. So it's a complete pleasure to be involved.
Well, Barnaby, thank you so much for your time, and we may get to chat again later.
Yeah, I hope so. Anytime, give me a shout if you've got any questions. Okay, lovely guys, lovely to meet you, and we'll talk again soon.
To hold in my hands a podcast that contains such power. That power would put me up above the gods. And through the signs of audio I shall have that power.
It was great to talk to him, wasn't it, Philip?
It was. Fascinating stories there, and some amazing theatre tours he did.
Yeah, especially the Teletubbies.
The Teletubby tour in particular was just amazing.
Mate, the anecdotes. Oh, they were endless. So, it's interesting to get some insights from some. Well, he's some of the new Big Finish blood that's coming through at the moment. There's quite a lot happening in Big Finish. New people coming in. It's very, very exciting. It seems like a time of really positive change at Big Finish. Not change so much, but sort of evolution.
It's development. I mean, the stuff he's doing is all slightly new, slightly left of centre stuff. And it's and really, I mean, the Unbound I really, really enjoyed. I finished that this week, which is probably, I don't know when this comes out, but I mean, really enjoyed that. It was a great show. Peladon I enjoyed some stories more than others, and we talked about my favourite episode of that, which was the Paul McGann one. Yes, lots of great stuff.
Yeah, and I just really love the Jenny.
Jenny,
box set too. It was fantastic.
It was so funny, so lighthearted.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's go into our recommendations for this week. And what I'd like to recommend is something that I can't recommend yet because, Philip, it's your turn.
My turn? Well, let me go then. I'm going to recommend a podcast called Cautionary Tales.
Ooh.
Nothing to do with Doctor Who whatsoever, but something that I'm enjoying listening to. It's an American podcast about things that happen, situations that happen, and what we can learn from them. And so it explores a moment in history. They're usually stories I don't really know anything about. One of them just recently was all based on a talk show of the 1950s, and the fact that one of the big talk shows was actually paying its guests. And it explores the whole thing about shame culture and the fact that there were all these famous people who all got paid, or so they weren't paid, they were given the answers because they were popular and the audience wanted to keep seeing them winning, and so they were being fed the answers, so they'd stay in week after week after week, and then they'd be made to take a dive at some point before they won too much and made the company go broke. But a lot of them were dragged into a court case, and they all lied, because even though these are all honourable, reputable people, the fear of losing their honour meant more that they were prepared to perjure themselves. And so it just explores human nature, explores what people do, why they do it. There's some talks about how stage hypnotism works. Because I've never understood stage hypnotists and how they had such power. And I've seen them working and thinking, I don't understand. How can these people be doing these things?
Do you understand now?
I do. All the tricks are explained in terms of how it works.
They're tricks?
There are all tricks, which I hadn't realised.
Is that right?
It is. And it's based on...
Very clever.
Yeah, it is very clever. Anyhow, I'm not going to give it away. But yeah, Cautionary Tales, some great episodes. If you're just into... It's kind of documentaries, but understanding the human condition and human psychology. They're
so
really
is it Australian? UK?
It's American.
American.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. We'll drop a link in the show notes.
Yeah. Now, what about you, Dwayne? What do you like? What have you been listening to?
I am going to do some shameless self-promotion this time. And it's nothing major, really, but I've noticed that my reading of An Unearthly Child has really been popular on our YouTube channel, Philip. It's astounding.
It has got lots of listens, but it's really well read, Dwayne. I like your voice.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, on that note, if you do like my voice, I have done a few other books as well, probably designed for younger readers originally than even Terence Dick's novels. These books that I've read are called Alfred, Hitchcock and the Three Investigators. Do you remember that series?
I do, vaguely.
Did you ever read any?
I would have done, but I don't have any.
I was pretty obsessed with them as a kid, and so I had the urge a little while back to start putting some down on audio because I was looking for audio readings of them, and there isn't any. So I thought I'd do some myself. Now, it does seem a bit funny, me doing it in an Australian accent, because I can't do an American accent, not very well anyway, and it's all set in California. Usually, these guys. And so far I've done 3 of the Three Investigators novels. I've done The Secret of Terror Castle, The Mystery of the Whispering Mummy, and The Secret of Skeleton Island. So I've done those 3 books. So if anyone wants to take a trip back and if you don't have a copy of the books, you can go and listen to my audio reading, or you can listen to a bit of it and then get inspired to go and track the books down. They're a bit like the Target hardbacks, Philip. They're quite collectible now, and they're getting very expensive to get hold of.
Right.
Yeah, so anyway, that's what I've done. I'll put links in the show notes if you want to check out some Alfred Hitchcock and the Three Investigators read by me.
Excellent. Well, always good to hear your voice.
Oh, thanks, Philip. That's it for our show today. We are looking forward to getting together again real soon. Thanks for joining me, Philip.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining me, Dwayne.
See you all next time, guys.
Bye, everyone.
This has been the Sirens of Audio, episode 107, The Direct Approach, with our guest Barnaby Kay and your hosts Philip Edney and Dwayne Bunny. Theme music by Joe Kramer. Contact us or check out all our details at sirensofaudio.com. You can send us audio feedback via anchor.fm/sirensofaudio or drop us a line at sirensofaudio@gmail.com. Also, you can drop a comment if you're watching via YouTube. We love interacting with you. Thanks for listening, audiophiles. We'll catch you next time.